Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters watching all across the globe. This is History Nights collaboration with Feed, or Islamic Relief collaboration with Feed, and it's a Hajj series, Hajj stories. And tonight's topic is Hajj Heartbreaks, which and the subtitle is Death Comes in Ihram. In Haram, sorry.
Ihram.
Ihram, right? Yes, death comes in Ihram, and I think most people may have heard of stories or come across somebody or a family member or friends, family member who sort of lost life whilst in Hajj, and we tend to always have that feeling that Alhamdulillah, we're all going to lose our life, and you lose it at a good place, but nonetheless, it's still always sad that someone has lost somebody, and it's like a roller coaster of emotions when having that, like, we lost somebody, but at the same time they went at the time of Hajj, and so there's a roller coaster in the mind. So tonight's topic is about Hajj heartbreaks. Those of you who've been watching for the last 6-7 days or 5 days, this is the History Night lives at 7:30 p.m. British Summer Time. You know the drill. Please share now, inshallah, so when the story starts, when Dr. Wajid starts, inshallah, we will have enough people online. All you need to do is press the share button. If it's your first time watching, well, you've been missing out on a lot. And I've been looking at some of the feedback. I've been looking at some of the comments in the story session, even like non-Muslim friends and stuff making so much positive comments and stuff. It's amazing. So if you've missed it so far, do go back on the Ilmfeed video posts. You'll find every single one and their title, inshallah. Do put on if it's your first time again, do switch on the notifications both on YouTube and on Facebook, so that whenever we go live, you will get a notification. Dr. Wajid, I hope you're well.
I'm fine, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for asking.
And I didn't introduce you. Look, I've been so relaxed about this one that I even introduced Islam. And Dr. Wajid, our main man, who's been pretty much bringing the content every single day since the 1st of Dhul Hijjah of this year. Please, those of you who are watching, make dua for Dr. Wajid, but there are many people behind the scene who you would never see, who are probably a digital number somewhere on the screen, but they put in hours and hours of effort behind both organizations, Islamic Relief and Ilmfeed. Please give them a lot of support, your love, but more importantly, give them your du'as, inshallah. Dr. Wajid, over to you for tonight.
Jazakallah khairan. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ashraf al-anbiya al-mursalin nabiyana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa alayhi tasliman jami'an kathira. When we often think about Hajj, especially these days, when everything goes through the Instagram filter, everything looks nice, the beautiful photos, the nice quote that comes along that's perfectly captured and we can like it, and we have our Hajj package. There's a package that we go on, and we actually know where we're going to stay, the hotel, even down to the food that we're going to get, what time we're going to get picked up, in what kind of vehicle. When we look at Hajj these days, it's easy to look at it as a very unequivocally positive experience, as something that's so adventurous. It's fun. It's another trip, but this is a spiritual trip, unlike maybe a trip that you take to other parts of the world. But it has another side to it, and it's really important for us as Muslims that we don't fall into the trap of looking at our history as just amazing golden age. It was amazing from day one till now, and everyone who lived in the past was amazing, and everything that happened was amazing. Because when you do that, what happens is that every time something reality comes through, it really hurts you, and it makes you feel like everything is not true. It's like when you imagine your parents are infallible, they cannot make a mistake, and everything they do is 100% right. And then when you realize that isn't true, that sometimes it can really affect you. So I thought it would be really good to share with you the reality of Hajj in a different sense to what we've been talking about till this time. People forget that Hajj wasn't something that you necessarily knew you were going to come back from. Now when we say that, I'm going on Hajj, please make dua for me, it's, mostly perfunctory. We know they're going to come back, inshallah. Most likely, there's a very small chance that something would happen. Well, we feel very comfortable. But in the old days, when you went on Hajj, there was a good chance that you weren't going to come back. And that's why I want to talk to you all about some Hajj heartbreak stories, or horror stories, as I mentioned it previously, of what could happen when you went on Hajj. The best way for me to explain this to you, the way I learned about it, was that I took Hajj for granted myself. Having grown up in Saudi, in Arabia, we used to go on Umrah all the time. So, alhamdulillah, I was very lucky. I was very blessed that I can't even remember my earliest memories from when I was a toddler. I could remember the Haram and the Kaaba. It was like a home away from home for me. But when we were going on Hajj, I thought, well, what's Hajj going to be? Hajj is going to be Umrah plus, right? Just a slightly longer version of Umrah. We got to go Tawaf, we got to do Sa'i, we got to do this, that, the other. Go to Mina, Muzdalifah, Arafat, back to Mina, all done, Eid, home, That's all. I didn't think it was going to be anything more amazing than that. So when we went, my father and mother took myself and my younger brother, and they left my two youngest brothers at home with friends. They took us two with them on Hajj. While we were there, it came time for stoning the Jamarat. And I realized by this time that Hajj is difficult. Hajj is not easy because it was hot. What happened to my amazing hotel? There's no amazing hotel over here. I can't just go to a restaurant whenever I feel hungry. What's going on? So I realized this was difficult. But I had no idea, and you could realize it from this one incident. When it came time to stone the Jamarat, my father said, I'm going to stone the Jamarat, and give me your stones that you collected, your pebbles you collected, for me and my brother and my mom. And me and my brother were like, no, we're coming to stone the Jamarat. You're not going, but you're not having all the fun. We're coming to stone the Jamarat too. And my father was like, absolutely not. You are not coming with me. And we insisted, and we shouted, and we screamed as kids do. And eventually my dad gave in, and he got frustrated, and he said, okay, you can come. He pointed at me because I was the eldest. You can come. You stay. And I was like, ha, I get to go. You don't. And it was even better now that I'm going to go. Not only am I going to go and throw rocks at Shaitan, but my arch nemesis, my younger brother, doesn't get to go. So this was fantastic. I was like, I don't even need to wait for Eid. Eid's here already. And as we're walking, holding my dad's hand, as we're walking down, and as we're getting a little bit closer to the Jamarat, my dad leans over to me and he goes, if you fall, then you will die. And I will not reach out for you because then I would die as well. So just know that you better not trip. Or if you fall, well, that's the end of you. Okay? And everything just disappeared before my eyes. What? And at that exact moment, I saw 7 or 8 dead bodies covered in their ihram on the floor. And also a wheelchair that had been mangled into pieces. It had just been completely obliterated, this wheelchair. If that's what happened to the wheelchair, what will happen to the person who was in the wheelchair? Now I'm wondering, why did my father take me, and why did he leave my brother at home? This is when you realize Hajj is not easy. Hajj is not a game. Hajj is not a holiday. Hajj can be difficult. And this is something that was realized by the people before us. When you went on Hajj, this is what you have to go through. When you went on Hajj, firstly, you need the money. And this is not a small amount of money. I mean, we're complaining today because even now it's becoming a lot of money to go on Hajj. But it was nothing. Even now, it's nothing compared to what happened in the past. In the past, you would save decades to go on Hajj. You would give your life savings. The choices that you made, for most people who weren't rich, the choices you made were, do I give my children education? Do I eat every day? Or do I save up for Hajj? Those are the kind of choices people had to make to go on Hajj. And then if you finally collected enough money, you have to go through the second obstacle. What's the second obstacle? The politics. There's always politics when it comes to Muslims, right? And the politics are never simple politics. It's never, conservative versus liberal, Democrats versus Republicans. It's always 20 different groups and everyone wants to kill each other. That's our politics, right? So this is what situation we were in. And when the Muslim world was being ruled by different groups, if you are from living in one part of the world and you're trying to do Hajj in a different part of the world, well, then good luck to you. Let's see if you can try. And not only that, when the Muslim world became colonized, then Hajj was a tool that the French and the Russians and even the British sometimes used to control their Muslim population. So if you wanted to make sure that the Muslim population didn't go on Hajj and get exposed to different ideas and didn't get to meet people from other parts of the Muslim world who might try to tell them to, escape the empire, escape your colonial masters, then you will make an excuse and you say you're not allowed to go. So the North Africans, it was almost every other year that the French were stopping them from going on Hajj. The Russians were stopping the Muslims from Central Asia from going on Hajj on a very regular basis. Anytime that they felt that, the politics isn't good, they would just stop the Hajj route. So it was difficult just to start on the journey was difficult. But then let's say you started on the journey. What a journey you had to go on. It's not on a plane. It wasn't even on a train. Most of the time, for most of history, you walked. You walked on Hajj. Sometimes you sat on a camel or a goat or a camel or a donkey or a horse if you were rich, but otherwise you walked. You walked all the way. I know this because my great-grandfather walked to Hajj 3 times. And he described to his own family the difficulties that he encountered. Walked all the way from India to Hajj. You would just disappear. When you walk and walk and walk, can you imagine walking across continents and walking across deserts? We don't even like the idea of driving across an area that doesn't have a gas station or a place to drink or eat food within easy reach. They had to walk. And this was a difficult journey. Not everyone made it. People died. If you got lost, you died. If you got delayed, you died. If you got caught by bandits, you died. And that was the next part. Let's say that you survived the journey. You are making it. You have walked daily across desert and jungle and your feet are bleeding and you are still going and nothing is going to stop you. And then now you got the bandits. The bandits who roamed Arabia, because it was a lawless land. It's only very recently that this has become a place that's been governed by anyone, right? But before that, it's lawless. This place was just run by bandits. And for whatever reason, it has never been the policy of almost any Muslim empire to do anything about it. They almost thought like, this was it. What are we going to do? We're going to fight them? So they left them to it. These bandits weren't kind of just like, hey, stick up. This is stick up, give me your money. I wish it was just like that. That means that people would still reach Hajj, but without money. No. These bandits were Bedouins. They had nothing. So they were like, give me your money, give me your clothes, and give me your food. You were naked without water or food in a desert. So they basically didn't kill you. They let the desert kill you. And a lot of the times they actually just killed people. So there's stories constantly throughout history of people getting killed. And this is why the majority of ulama have stated that no Muslim ruler should go on Hajj. You're not supposed to go on Hajj. For the last few hundred years, this has been a dispensation saying that not only is it okay for a Muslim ruler not to go on Hajj, they should not go on Hajj because there's a good chance that they will be killed by bandits on the way and they'll die on the way and that the governance will fall apart. So if it was that dangerous for the ruler, if it was that dangerous for the king or the emperor or the khalifa to go, what about the normal person? Your body isn't even found in the desert. Nobody cares, it's gone. But let's say you make it past the desert. Let's say you make it past the bandits. Let's say you finally get to Mecca and Medina. Then your problems begin. They don't finish. Because Mecca and Medina, when you have so many people from different places, parts of the world in one place, you get diseases. You get diseases that you didn't have before, and these diseases kill you. How did the indigenous people of South America disappear? The indigenous people who lived in South America were not killed just by the conquistadors from Spain. They were killed because they had never, ever experienced viruses from Europe. So when the people from the conquistadors from Europe came with their viruses to South America, it was literally a complete annihilation of their population. Millions upon millions, they all died. Because just like today, you all know this, right? Coronavirus is not a dangerous disease, it's the common cold. But this coronavirus is killing us because we've never experienced it. Our body's not used to it because it's half bat, half pangolin, whatever concoction it is. The human body is not used to it, and therefore it kills us. That's what was happening on Hajj. People were turning up, and these kind of weird diseases, from one part of the world to another, was coming together, and people were dying. But it wasn't just that. People were dying from diseases because of poor hygiene. Mecca is in a valley, right? And what happens in a valley? What happens in a valley is if it rains, all the water comes to the bottom of the valley, and at the bottom of the valley is the Haram, where everyone is. The Kaaba used to get flooded. Even until the 1940s, you have pictures of the Kaaba flooded and people doing tawaf around the Kaaba by swimming. But it wasn't flooded like a pool, like an infinity pool in a hotel. It was flooded with sewage because Mecca had no sewage system. So it was literally like the toilet bowl all around the Haram. And when you're sitting in that kind of effluent, you're going to get sick. So surviving the Hajj itself, surviving the diseases that you would get on Hajj was difficult. But let's say you survived the Hajj. Then you get to the biggest test of all, the corruption. The corruption that was there in Mecca and the Hijaz was at a level that the more you read about it, the more it sickens you. There were, like I told you before, Mecca and Medina and the Hijaz was ruled by a family called the Sharifs. The Sharifs were descendants of the Prophet ﷺ, but they were very far from the Prophet ﷺ in their adab, in their akhlaq, in their manners, in their way of dealing with people. Very far. They were ruling because every single Khalifa or empire, whether it was the Mamluks or the Ottomans or the Mughals or the Kaitas of West Africa, whoever they were, the Mansas, they all respected them because of their lineage. But unfortunately, they were not deserving of this respect. They only, of course, we have to respect the descendants of the Prophet ﷺ, but their actions meant that they took money and they didn't spend it on the poor. They didn't spend it on infrastructure. They didn't spend it on a sewage system. They literally just took the money. So this, unfortunately, led to a situation where they were corrupt to the hilt. So I'll tell you very quickly, I'll finish with this story of the Aurangzeb, one of the greatest Mughal emperors and a great Muslim, mashallah. He sent his money to Mecca, but he sent a spy with it. And he said, I want you to see how this money gets spent. And the spy that he sent, or the person he sent to report, came back and said, they just swallow the money. They don't spend it on the Hujjaj. They don't spend it on the poor of Mecca and Medina. They don't spend it on the Hajj. So he said, I'm never going to give money to them. I'm going to give my money. I'm going to give the money, but it's going to be sent to my own agent in the field, my own person in Mecca, and they're going to distribute it. This is why the Sharifs hated Aurangzeb. But luckily for them, after Aurangzeb died, people continued normal service and kept giving the Sharifs money and money and money. So there was the ruler of Bhopal. Bhopal is a place in India. The ruler of Bhopal, for some reason they had a system where the ruler was always a queen, the Begum of Bhopal. The Begum of Bhopal went on Hajj and she wrote a Hajj diary about her time on Hajj. And when you read about it, honestly, it makes you just burn inside what she experienced. When she went on Hajj, everything from having her possessions stolen to when you turn up at Hajj, they tax every single person just for the honor of turning up. And then when they turned up, they open your luggage, they take out the valuables, and they tax you on whatever it wasn't valuable. And they did this openly and they didn't care. Then you get robbed by the Bedouins who take you from Jeddah to Mecca. When you turn up at Mecca, any single time that you see the Sharif, you have to pay a Nazrana. What does Nazrana means? It's to look at the Sharif, you have to pay him money. And then anytime they turn up, they'll turn up at your door and they'll say, this is a new custom, pay me money. Bakshish. They call it bakshish. If anyone has been to some parts of the Muslim world, or the Arab world especially, you know what bakshish is, right? This is basically bribing with style. You open the door for someone, you say, give me the bakshish. You get a taxi for someone, give me the bakshish. Give me the money, give me the money, give me the money. It's like they call it tips, but it's not tips, right? They haven't actually done you a service. They're making up things. I remember when I was in Egypt, you couldn't wait for the door to open. Someone would open the door from the outside and say, give me the money. So unfortunately, this habit was there in Mecca and Medina, but it was there amongst the elite. And they would fight. If you looked at something, if you looked at something like at a stall, they would give it to you and then they would start fighting you for the money. And if you didn't do what the Sharif told you to do, then one of his servants would say, listen, my master has a habit of making sure people get shot in the middle of the night. So you wouldn't want to be crossing him, would you? That doesn't sound like going on Hajj. It sounds like entering the mafia. But that's pretty much what she described. And it wasn't just her. Story after story you read about this. Ibn Juber, everyone knows Ibn Battuta, who traveled across the world. Well, another person like Ibn Battuta was Ibn Juber, who was from Andalusia. And Ibn Juber was like a very religious young man. He would go from scholar to scholar. That he was like Ibn Battuta. He was a qadi himself, but he was interested in everything. He was interested in having a fun time, getting married, and so on. Ibn Jubair was a very serious person. He went from lecture to lecture, scholar to scholar, khutbah to khutbah. Ibn Jubair said about Hijaz, he goes, there is no other place on earth that is in so dire a need for cleansing by the sword than the Hijaz. And my great grandfather, he said that the reason they're like this, because he gave the same stories, that the poverty, the corruption. He said they're so poor. He goes, you don't understand how poor they are. We would eat the watermelons, and we would throw the seed on the floor, and they would fight each other for the seed of the watermelon. That's how poor they are. Because this is why they're like this. This is why there's a lot of corruption. My brothers and sisters, when you listen to these stories, and it's a generalization because it makes it sound like everyone is corrupt, everyone was evil, everyone had a bad time. Of course not. That's not the case. But there was a side to Hajj. We need to remember only recently, literally 1990, 1,400 people died in a stampede. 2015, it's not that long ago. You guys will remember. Go look at it. More than 2,000 people died in another stampede. People died when tents caught on fire. These things happened on Hajj until recently. Only recently has Hajj become very safe. So it wasn't the most safe experience in the world. But anyone listening to this will ask a very honest question. Why in the world would anyone do this themselves? Why in the world would anyone pay so much money to go through this? Why would people do this? Walk halfway across the world to experience what? Experience disease and corruption and bandits? Why? And this is the lesson, my brothers and sisters, that I want you to take. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, do the people think that they will be left to say we believe and they will not be tested? Of course not. The lesson that I want you all to take from this, the difficulties our ancestors went through to go on Hajj, and the ease with which we are able to book a package. The biggest difficulty for us is what kind of package that we're gonna take, and whether our bus arrives on time and is hot. But the difficulty our ancestors took to go on Hajj, nothing else will explain this apart from faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the lesson that I want you all to take is that nothing in this life or in the next is earned without sacrifice, without difficulty. Nothing. For anything worthwhile in life, for anything worthwhile, you must work for it. You must be prepared to sacrifice. You must be prepared to go through trials and tribulations. You must. Otherwise, you will never get it. The student who wants an easy life, then have an easy life, but you will not get those A grades. The person who wants to earn a lot of money without working, you can't have it that way. You gotta work hard. Nothing worthwhile is achieved without hard work and sacrifice, without trials and tribulations. And as a Muslim Ummah, we need to learn this lesson big time. We need to learn. I ask you, my brothers and sisters, when was the last time your bones ached because you worked for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When was the last time you did not sleep in your bed because you were working for the sake of this ummah? When was the last time that you were physically shattered, that every single fiber in your being was crying out for rest? When was the last time you did that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Answer that question, because for our ancestors, there were many times like that. They went on Hajj. This is how they showed their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what they were prepared to do. If they were prepared to do that for the sake of this pillar of Islam, what else were they prepared to do? That's how this religion came to us this day. Do you think it reached us by people sitting back and then and growing their Instagram following? Do you think this deen reached us to this day by people having just cursing the scholars or cursing each other or cursing different sects? Do you think this deen reached us by just hoping and wishing for it? It only reached us to this day because people were willing to die for it. People were willing to sacrifice for it. People were willing to put themselves through unimaginable hardship to achieve it. So this day, are you willing to work for it? Make sure that when you turn off this, that you answer that question. You've worked for everything. You've worked for your you worked for your dunya. You worked to get married. You worked to get a good job. You worked to buy a house. Have you worked for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Really worked till you were tired and exhausted beyond belief? Answer that question. I finish with this one true story happened to me. I met two brothers who came back from Hajj. And I met them separately. And I asked the first one, how was it? And he replied, it was horrible. It was horrible. Honestly, like I got cheated everywhere. People were pushing and shoving. It was so hot. You can't even imagine what happened. They promised me 5-star, I got 4-star. They said there was going to be a bus. I ended up walking for 2 kilometers. So everything that went wrong for this brother, it went wrong for him. It really sounded like a horrible experience. Then I asked the next person, the other brother, sometime later, how was your Hajj? He said, it was amazing. It changed my life. Wallahi, I feel like a different person. I connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I realized the purpose of my life, that I'm here to work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to build my akhirah. It honestly, it changed everything. It was the most profound, most beautiful experience of my life. You know what was amazing? Those two people were in the same group. They were in the same group, in the same Hajj, in the same year. But they had two completely different experiences. Why? For one, the trial and the tribulation was a punishment for him. And for the other, it was a means to achieving his real goal, which is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah an accepted Hajj. So when trials and tribulations come your way, and they will in life, otherwise it isn't life. The only people who don't have any stress and any difficulties in life are the dead. So when trials and tribulations come your way, remember that maybe this is your journey. And inshallah, if you persevere and you stay patient, but you keep going, you reach one day Mecca, and you will see the Kaaba with your own eyes. Jazakallah khairan. Subhanallah, bihamdika, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.
Wow. MashaAllah. That was MashaAllah, deep. It was very deep.
Thank you.
To be honest, when I saw the title, I kind of assumed it's going to be like, okay, people doing Hajj, and I heard a story like the 2015, I think it was 2005 at one point, with the stampede, and certain number of people died, and I thought it was going to be those kind of stories. Then just to realize, okay, hold a second. I mean, that was a one-off when things went slightly wrong in good days. That there was a whole deep, dark side to some people's experience. And you can only imagine, right? You can only imagine how hard it was. Like, these are stories that we're hearing, but like, who goes on holiday to a place where they're going to feel like they're going to get robbed, right? It's just so like, it's ajib, mashallah. But
it's a proof of Islam. It's a proof. If you want, you don't need miracles. It's a proof that for 1,400 years, people still walked. They walked through the desert, and they walked through past bandits, and they walked past disease, and they went to see the Kaaba, which we can do with a plane ticket. So don't forget, when you go and see there, how difficult it was for those who before you.
You know, on today's timing, right? I think we're gone slightly over, but
sorry.
I know, no. I know, Rafiki. I know certain people always say to me, like, you know, do go for a longer session if you can, and so on and so forth. And I think today's one, I think, because we're good in time, especially for Salah and stuff like that, if we go slightly over, I think just this is a bonus segment for those of you who've been watching all this time. Jazakallah khair. But I think we're going to carry on slightly a bit more with your ijaza. And if you have to go, no problem, inshallah, do come and join us, or do watch it later on, inshallah. But there are a few questions. But you know, one thing that related so well with me, right? And I'm going to say open. So yesterday I went for a bike ride. With a couple of friends, and it was I got one of those road races and stuff, and I found one of like the best routes. You know, there's all these mansions and all these like green area and countryside lanes, and I feel like, you know what, my first trial is going to be on that road. And so I drove out there with a friend, and then we went for a ride. Little did we know, I mean, it was all just uphill struggle. Cut the long story short, I came back and I was like in the group, and I was like, this history nights tonight. Do I have to kind of be on, or can I get away? I was so shattered, right? And I was like, you know what, let me get some sleep in between the salats. But if you ask me, like it was so real, like, when can I remember in my entire life that I did the work of the deen and I felt so shattered? Like, you know, like, you're physically shattered. I mean, like, yeah, fair enough, sometimes you spend a lot of hours at work, or sometimes a lot of hours having meetings and discussions and stuff. But, you know, I was trying to question myself whilst you're speaking, like, when have I ever felt that like I was so shattered for the sake of Allah, for the sake of the deen in particular? And it's, you know what, being real and true to myself, I don't think I remember a single day. I mean, I remember being tired here and there, but not like this, to that extent. And you can imagine Hajj. Like, even now, I'm imagining Hajj for me or families and stuff. It's all about the right ticket, the right price, the right stuff, you know, 3-star hotel, 5-star hotel, that sort of stuff. And you don't realize that, you know, we are doing some of the most deepest, you know, work of the deen so easily. Allah has so much, you know, has favored us so much compared to others, that we do it with ease and relax. And speaking to one of the organizers whilst we were on shot, and then he was sending me a message saying, I've been on Hajj, it was so easy. And I was like, you know what, alhamdulillah, Allah has favored us so much.
Your test is the ease, right? Your test,
yeah.
That was easy, but that's your test. There are other people who work hard. You know, a lot of people, like a lot of us, for example. I'll give you one example of someone who's alive today. We're all so happy about Hagia Sophia becoming a masjid again. Almost all Muslim world is. I know some of them have reservations, but the majority of the Muslim world is. Do you know the president who made that happen, President Erdogan? He sleeps at midnight and he wakes up at 4 a.m. And he has one day off a year. Like, that's what it takes. right? Sultan Abdul Hamid II, who we all like to talk about, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, he didn't sleep in his bed. He used to work until in his chair and fall asleep. And then when the pen fell, then he would wake up and just start working again, because there was just too much to do, too many people to sort out, too many things, too many problems. And he would write poetry. People write poetry, love letters to their beloved. He would write poetry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in it he would just cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he said, I don't want the Muslims to see me, their Khalifa, cry. So he would cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about how tired he is, about how difficult life is. And those are the leaders, but there are others, and there are scholars everywhere across the world, and they work non-stop, and they put us to shame. They're old, their hair is covered gray, but they work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our job is to make sure that they don't work alone.
And we have a question, right? And sorry, we're going on this one, but I think people deserve to get a bit more, inshallah, of your time. So someone asked a question: how was Hajj under the Ottomans? So during when the Ottomans were looking after the Haramain, I guess he's asking about in terms of the ease or the difficulty of Hajj during those days. Was it good?
It improved. It improved from previously, but they still didn't sort out the bandit issue, and they still didn't sort out the Sharif issue, right? And that came, both those issues came to bite them later on, which is what tomorrow's talk is about. Which, by the way, tomorrow is my favorite one. Out of all the stories, if I had to pick one, tomorrow's my favorite one. So if you're going to tune in for one, tune in for that one, inshallah.
Wow. Exclusive for you guys. All right. If you'd view it, mashallah, an exclusive there. Go ahead, Doc.
And some people were asking about books. So there's lots of good books, but this is a really good book about journeys to Mecca. It's called 1,000 Roads to Mecca by Michael Wolff, a revered American brother. And he's literally put together Hajj stories from all across the world, different people, all their experience on Hajj. So you can literally, it's like it's like the History Nights, but better, you know.
Doc, can I ask you to show that again and just hold out the screen for 5 seconds? No, not at the screen.
There's my screen.
Yeah, there we are. So those of you watching who want to read a good book, this might be something you pick up after Eid, inshallah, to read about people's Hajj stories. Jazakallah khair, Doc. Yeah, I think we've covered quite a fair bit. Tomorrow's topic. Tomorrow is going to be the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Today's the 7th. Tomorrow's going to be the 8th one. And it's the 7th day of Dhul Hijjah. Our last show is going to be on the day of Arafah, the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah, inshallah. So tomorrow is the 7th one, and it's about Mehmed Aya, a roller coaster Hajj. About Mehmed Aya, a roller coaster Hajj. And I think Doc's given a little preview of what's coming. So see you tomorrow at the same time. Jazakallah khair. Please, if you enjoyed it, if you feel like you benefited from it, please do press share on your social media. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.